Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the live chat. It is so good to be back. As you all know, I am Benji-Sales, and I am pumped for today's episode of the live chat. We have a ton to talk about today. Can you let me know if the stream is up and working? I'm getting immediately, as soon as the stream starts, I'm getting errors from YouTube. So can you let me know if you can see me? Can you let me know if you can hear me? I think there's like a whole bunch of video here at the beginning of me just looking at the screen. So it got all messed up and there was a delay. So yeah, I don't know. Let me know if you can hear me. Let me know if you can see me. That's hilarious if the stream is going to start all janky, but hopefully you can see it. I don't know. We're going to see what's going on. But anyways, welcome to another episode of the live chat, y'all. We have a ton to talk about today. We have so much. So it was a ton of news has been breaking in the last couple days. First of all, we just got yesterday the big announcement from Bethesda that Machine Games, the makers of Wolfenstein, are making a Indiana Jones game. That's right, Indiana Jones from Bethesda. That is exciting. So that just got announced yesterday. A few days ago, we got a whole bunch of game announcements, or I should say game release window announcements at CES from Sony. There was stuff like Project Athea in there, stuff like Stray, Little Devil Inside, Kena, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So we've got a bunch of release date windows now we can talk about. That just got revealed. We just got this morning an announcement from Ubisoft that they are making a Star Wars game. Massive, the creators of The Division will be making it. So we've got that we can talk about. What it means that EA will no longer have the exclusive license for Star Wars games starting in just a couple years. That's big. And then just now, news just broke that Hogwarts Legacy is delayed, and now Jason Schreier is reporting that multiple other games will be delayed out of 2021. So yeah, there's a lot. There is a lot. For anyone that is joining the live chat for the first time, the way this works, you drop your comments down into chat, you drop your questions, and I get to as many as possible. Now, there's two ways to do that. First of all, there is the super chat option. Basically, the way that works, you make a donation, it gives me a notification, and immediately I hit super chats first, right? They get the priority, but do not feel obligated to donate in super chat because I do also hit as many free questions as possible. Depending on how big the chat is today, I can't guarantee that I'll hit every single free question, but I usually get to quite a few. So start dropping those comments down into chat, start dropping those questions, and let me know what you want to talk about today, because like I said, there's a lot. This should be a big episode, at least in terms of content we can talk about. I'm going to get away from the camera for 2 seconds, and I'm going to be right back. I'm going to open this door really quick. All right, I am back. Sorry about that. Okay, so we've got super chats dropping right off the bat. Let me hit those super chats really quick because I'm seeing multiple super chats. First of all, right off the bat, we've got Plastic Hearts Podcast dropping a $10 super chat right off the bat. Thank you so much, Plastic Hearts Podcast. That is incredibly kind. You're always incredibly kind here in chat. Benji Boy, with Harry Potter delayed to 2022, how long are we going to pretend that God of War releases this year? Does pushing God of War to 2022 also remove the need for cross-gen, assuming PS5s become more available? Ooh, this is a great question. So yeah, anyone that missed it, this news literally just broke right before the chat started. Hogwarts Legacy has been delayed out of this year. Now, that was originally supposed to be 2021 when it was first announced, but as we all know, we're still in the middle of a crazy global pandemic, and that's going to throw everything off, right? Game delays are not uncommon in general, let alone this time of year, right? Or I mean, this year in general. 2020 was just a disaster, and 2021, at least in the early parts of it, is not looking much better, right? Hopefully things improve in terms of the pandemic. Hopefully the vaccine works. But clearly we are still facing massive, massive, massive issues. Now, will God of War get delayed? You know, it's funny because we just had this conversation in the last chat, and I was being optimistic. I was saying, you know what? I think it's still going to make this year. I think it's still going to happen. Wow. I'm sorry. I think chat is crashing. This is crazy. So I moved everything upstairs because I thought it was going to fix my issues, and it doesn't look like it's fixed any of them. So hopefully y'all can see the chat. I am so sorry. Considering how much I stream on YouTube, I gotta fix this. I don't know how to fix it, y'all. I don't know how to fix my chat. I have no idea what the problem is. Every device in my house is showing crazy good connection, but my computer, it just will not get a good internet connection. It's unbelievably strange. It's the only device in my house doing this. I'm so sorry, everyone. Anyways, will God of War get delayed? You know, my optimism in the last chat may have been a little too optimistic, right? I was saying if any of the Sony games were going to get delayed, that God of War was the most likely candidate. And yeah, it looks like... I'm sorry, I'm distracted because this is so bad. At least on my end, it says nothing's happening. It says the entire stream is locked up, so... I guess, can you let me know if you can see this? Because I think it's broke. I think it's done. I think we're done. Unbelievable. Okay. Wow, so moving upstairs has actually made this worse. I'm right next to my router. Literally right next to it. Okay. So yeah, will God of War get delayed? You know, it's impossible to know for sure, but I'm going to go ahead and say I'm thinking it's more likely, you know, even than a week ago. I still have my fingers crossed that they're going to make it. I hope that Sony doesn't, because to me it feels like a massive bummer if they announced that for 2021, because that always felt bold to me, and I wish they wouldn't have done that unless they were certain, locked in, that this was going to make this year. I wish they would have just maybe shown the logo and said something like coming to PS5 without putting a year on it. That is the part that, if it gets delayed, is going to be a bummer to me. Just because it always felt bold, right? As soon as that game was announced, that's all everyone talked about, was that, oh, it's going to get delayed. It's going to get delayed. You know, it's not going to make this year. I don't know why they announced it for this year. Everyone was assuming that that was going to be what happens. And yeah, I hope not, right? I hope it doesn't get delayed, but I would say chances are strong, especially with what Jason's saying, where he's saying multiple games are going to be delayed out of this year. That's basically what Jason's hinting at, so we'll have to see. Benji with a 10 super chat. Hi, Benji. Big N seems to be poised for a great year. Numbers great everywhere in early 2021. Monster Hunter Rise and 3D World in Q1. Could 2021 be even bigger for Nintendo than 2020 despite next gen? You know, I had said that that my expectation was that Nintendo is going to be down year over year in 2021, like as a whole. And I'm still kind of sticking to that, just because 2020 was insane, like every single month. Like I said, I could see a scenario where 2021 has times where it's above 2020. But I'd be surprised if the entire year is up, just because the pandemic last year really accelerated Switch to an unbelievable level. Now, it was more than just the pandemic, right? It was also things like Animal Crossing and all that. But, yeah, the amount of people in chat is dropping hard, so I'm guessing that the stream's dead. But I'm going to keep going just in case it is going, but I don't know. I don't know how to fix this. But yeah, I'd be surprised, right? I would be surprised if I'd be surprised if 2021's bigger, because 2021 was giant. Now, there is a lot of really big games coming, right? Monster Hunter Rise is going to be enormous for Japan. I mean, enormous. I think the word is that pre-orders are tracking even bigger than Monster Hunter World over there. And Monster Hunter World was huge, right? It wasn't the biggest Monster Hunter game ever in Japan. It's the biggest globally. But to be tracking ahead of World, that's big, right? It's going to be giant for the Japanese market. And I'll tell you what, Bowser's Fury looks so cool that way better than I expected it was going to be, right? Way more different and unique, that I think 3D World is going to push more units on Switch than I originally expected it to. So yeah, it's going to be a big year for Nintendo, especially if they have a revision and especially if Breath of the Wild 2 is going to hit. But yeah, I don't know. 2021 being bigger than 2020 for Nintendo. If so, then it's going to pass. I mean, it's going to, okay, let me put it this way. If 2021 is bigger than 2020 was for Switch, there's a very legitimate chance that that Switch is going to be coming close, not matching. I still wouldn't expect that, but it's going to be not that far from PS2 at the end of its life cycle, honestly. If 2021, even with next-gen console launches, even with how big 2020 was, if 2021's above 2020, I'm telling y'all, Switch is not going to be that far from PS2 at the end of its life. Now, it's going to be a chunk, right? I'm not sitting here saying, oh, wow, it's going to pass PS2, or it's going to be, within, 2 million units. I'm not saying that, but it's like, it's gonna not be like a ginormous amount away if 2021's bigger, because that means, legs for it would mean they continue to be outstanding. So there's no reason to think if 2021's bigger than 2020 that 2022 would just fall off a cliff, right? It's going to just keep selling and selling and selling and selling. So it's going to be the second biggest console probably of all time by like a good margin if 2021's up. All right. Split End 89 with a $2 super chat here. Thank you, Split End, and thank you for making the chat. Dream Star Wars game / dev pairing. Now, this is interesting, right? So, basically, EA's Star Wars license, as we mentioned off the top, is coming to an end, right? 2023 is going to be when that's all done and over with. They are not extending the contract because EA has been the only one who's been allowed to publish core gaming Star Wars. Now, other studios and teams and stuff were allowed to make what Disney calls casual or more broad ones. Like, that is actually part of the contract, is that EA makes the core Star Wars games, right? But that's why there's been like mobile titles and things like this necessarily that aren't from EA. But that is going to completely open up now as soon as this contract's over. And now we have Ubisoft joining the fray, right? And they're making a open world game. Ubisoft Massive is. And that's exciting, right? Because EA, I feel like EA started their Star Wars run pretty rough, right? The first Battlefront was overall very shallow and not what people were expecting. We never really got those big Star Wars single-player games we were hoping for until towards the end, right? The end of the EA deal, finally I felt like they were starting to nail it, right? We saw Jedi Fallen Order do excellent, do spectacular in sales, also be a strong single-player game. We've seen Star Wars Squadrons way exceed expectations for EA, but all of this started happening like towards the end of that deal, right? It started off in a very rough footing, multiple canceled games of Star Wars games that they were working on. So I get why Disney was probably like, let's see how this would do if we can get, more people making Star Wars games. And I think that's probably a good thing for the brand overall. Now, a dream Star Wars game / dev pairing, I have two thoughts on this. First of all, I want to see a Mandalorian game. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be Mando from the show, right? I'm not necessarily saying, hey, let's have Mando and do that exact same storyline or anything like that. But just a Mandalorian game in general would be so sweet, right? If anyone who has watched that show, those first 2 seasons, it just feels like it would make a great game, right? Traveling the galaxy, having sweet armor. You can upgrade your armor. I mean, he does it in the show, right? It's almost like he's unlocking upgrades and gadgets. He gets new weapons, and it's one of those things that just feels like a perfect fit. So give me some type of Mandalorian game from somebody. Actually, that would make perfect sense for Massive, right? Ubisoft's team, because they are, known for making third-person shooter, right? The Division, that is their big, big, big game, and that is a third-person shooter. So that would be like a perfect fit, I feel like, for a Mandalorian game. I have no idea if that's what they're doing, but a Mandalorian game for sure I want to see. And then I want to see a big Star Wars RPG, right? An actual role-playing Star Wars game. Everyone says Knights of the Old Republic. For me, it doesn't actually have to be Knights of the Old Republic. That would be cool. It would be nice to see that setting again. But it's not one of those things where I feel like it has to be KOTOR. I'd be fine with really any kind of Star Wars RPG. But I want to see somebody make a full-scale, role-playing, Mass Effect, whatever style Star Wars RPG. So those are kind of what I'm looking for, Split End. All right, super chats are cleared. Let's get to free questions. Let's hope that everything keeps working in chat. The amount of viewers live is going back up, so I'm guessing that we're probably running good. Batwing. Hello, Benji. Do you think Marvel Games will partner with more publishers besides Sony and Square Enix? Who is the likely candidates? Yeah, Batwing, this is a fantastic question because I have been shocked we have not seen more big Marvel games after how giant of a success Spider-Man was. This has really surprised me. Now, we saw Avengers, right? So we have had one. But when you think about it, Spider-Man came out in 2018. After seeing that level of gigantic success, I would think, we're in 2021 now, so we're over 2 years later. I'm not necessarily surprised that we haven't seen more games come out that are these big AAA Marvel property games. That part doesn't surprise me because some people may have held off until they saw Spider-Man sales, but I'm surprised we haven't had more announced now, right? Because we are in this scenario where clearly we have seen the sales success. Like, there's just no doubt about it, right? There's no debate about it. And even Avengers, y'all, even Avengers in the rough state it launched in with very mixed reviews, it still launched as the second biggest superhero game of all time in the United States its launch month. So even with all those issues, it shows you how in demand really, really high budget Marvel games are, is that even Avengers, with its issues, was only second to Spider-Man 2018 in its launch month for superhero video game sales. So it's like, y'all, clearly the demand is there. Why is there not a Black Panther game yet? Why is there not a standalone, big scale Captain America or Thor? Or, I could go on, right? It just seems crazy to me that we're in a scenario where that's not happening, right? I am shocked by that, Batwing. I would think there are more of these games in development. It makes business sense. Now, as you noted, it's not an exclusive thing, right? Marvel wasn't like Star Wars where they came out and locked themselves to one publisher right off the bat. They played it more open. I would think so, Batwing. I would think somebody, if there's no Black Panther game, that is crazy to me. That movie generated over $1 billion, has, an amazingly cool setting, a really awesome protagonist. That one to me in particular, I feel like is a giant lost cause, like a giant missed opportunity if a team isn't tackling Black Panther specifically, but there's tons. Doctor Strange would make an amazing game. I could go on and on down the list, but yeah, Batwing, I'm shocked. I'm shocked we haven't had more announcements. Javier Macias Leon. Hi, Benji. I hope you're doing better now. Yes, much, much better until this stream just completely went to trash. But other than that, I'm doing great. Really, really good. Much, much better. So we've just learned about Hogwarts Legacy delayed to 2022. What other games do you think could be delayed? Ragnarok is the first one that comes to mind. Yes, we touched on this, just right off the top with Plastic Hearts Podcast. I would say that definitely God of War would be a strong contender for that. I would say What's some other ones? Horizon, no, because, Sony literally just at CES, as we mentioned off the top, dated a whole bunch of games, and that one still said 2021. I just really don't think Horizon's going to catch a delay, especially now that we've already seen, like, in-game footage of it. Now, yes, not gameplay, but we have seen in-game footage. I just don't think Horizon's getting pushed. I don't think Halo Infinite's getting pushed because that already got delayed and now it got a full year delay. So they have a lot of time to work on that. And they delayed that after COVID impact was already assessed, right? So they already kind of knew how COVID was going to impact the development of that game moving forward. So I don't suspect Halo. What are some other ones that could be delayed out of this year? You'd have to think about stuff that just has generic 2021, right? Not something that's coming soon. Right? Stuff like Hitman and games like this. I mean, Hitman's about to come out, right? So, I don't know. I would have to look at the release calendar a little bit more. But I'd say, yeah, God of War's the big red flag one, right? All we've seen on it, at least that's announced games for this year, right? There could have been more that was targeting 2021 that just didn't get announced yet for this year that are getting delayed. You have to keep in mind that that is a distinct possibility. But in terms of what's announced, God of War, we've literally only seen a logo. We have seen nothing else than a logo. So that, to me, would be the most likely one. I hope not Breath of the Wild 2. I really hope that's this year. And then Yoda Soda asking another similar one. This seems to be a hot button topic. Asking if Hogwarts Legacy could Gotham Knights, Dying Light 2, and others get delayed till next year or only a few months. I don't think Gotham Knights is going to get delayed till next year, because I think that game was probably targeting summer. Now, I don't know that for a fact by any means, but that to me didn't seem like a holiday game, especially for how much they showed of that game already. Like, we saw a big chunk of gameplay of that game, right? Not just in-game, like, cutscenes. Like, we saw direct gameplay. So I'm guessing that wasn't probably targeting an end-of-year release. So I'm guessing Gotham Knights is still this year. Keep in mind, Gotham Knights and Hogwarts Legacy are both WB games. So I think since they announced Hogwarts Legacy today, if Gotham Knights was also moving out of this year, WB may have just announced both at once, right? To kind of soften that blow a little bit in terms of if they're going to delay both, right? Not spread it out too much, just get all the bad news out there at once and then, move forward. The fact that they didn't announce a delay for Gotham Knights makes me think it's probably still this year. Stuart O'Connor. Hi, Benji. With Indiana Jones and the newly announced Star Wars game, is it odd that Xbox has been very vocal on its excitement and support for the games, yet Sony has not said a thing? Okay, so let's just touch on, is Indiana Jones going to be exclusive, right? Is it going to be exclusive? That's the big question. That is the question that everyone's asking, that everyone's debating online. It has gotten crazy traction all over the internet. Like, I feel like there's more talking about is it going to be exclusive than anything else about the project. Okay, so let's talk about what we can infer from other licensed games and contracts and things about the past, and what I personally think is probably the scenario we're looking at here. But keep in mind, I want to make this crystal clear. I have no idea if this is going to be exclusive or multi-platform. And honestly, anyone out there telling you that they know that, unless they are directly working on the project with contracts signed. So in other words, the Phil Spencers, Phil probably has a good idea, or directly people at Lucasfilm, or directly people at Bethesda. Anyone else, any random person that's going to tell you that they know exactly the hardcore details of this contract, they don't. I'm telling you that right now. But here's what we do know about in the past, right? I will tell you, it is very rare for a licensed IP to not have some form of multi-platform in the contract, okay? Now, I have, again, zero idea on the details of this. But, for example, the Star Wars EA deal, there was, wording in there that said that the games were supposed to be multi-platform projects to an extent. With the sports titles for EA, those games are required to appear on all viable platforms, right? This is a very common thing, very, very common. And there's a key reason for that, right? If you're lending out a license, right? Because keep in mind, Lucasfilm's not making this game, right? Disney's not making this game. They're giving the license out. They usually, typically, want that IP to hit as broadly as possible because it's a two-pronged approach, right? You're trying to lift the overall visibility of this IP. So whatever it is, right? If it's Star Wars, you're wanting people to get excited playing Star Wars games, then also want to go see Star Wars movies, right? Or same thing with Indiana Jones. Disney has announced they're working on a new Indiana Jones movie. What better way to also help drive excitement for the Indiana Jones film than also an Indiana Jones game, right? It's all supposed to work organically together to raise visibility to the IP in general, and then of course also sell really well for the game. A lot of times there's things like royalties in there in terms of numbers of units sold, etc., right? We don't want to go too deep into how all this works, but typically it's pretty rare that a licensed IP specifically states, yeah, you can make this on only one platform ever, right? If something like that does happen, like Spider-Man, right, like we saw with Insomniac, now I've seen a lot of people say Sony owns Spidey. That's why. Sony does not own Spider-Man. In fact, they don't own Spider-Man in any scenario, games included, except for movies. The only thing Sony has rights to is the film rights. Now, there used to be more than that. Sony used to also get a lot of money off of Spider-Man merchandise. Part of the contract also used to state that they could get things like merch money and things like this, but that's all done. All of that reverted back to Disney. Literally, the only thing that Sony has rights to Spider-Man is making movies, nothing else. Now, clearly, there's also now a new Spider-Man contract, right, for the games. Sony would have had to have spent money for that. There's no way that was given to them for free. Now, I am sure that Sony also utilized their movie film rights for leverage, right? I'm sure that they said, hey, we're already strong caretakers of Spider-Man. We're already making movies. This is an organic relationship that makes sense. So I'm sure that they leveraged that to help them with the Spider-Man rights. But Spider-Man isn't exclusive to PlayStation because Sony owns those rights. They don't. They flat out don't in games. It's exactly, the way it is. So with Indiana Jones, we're looking at a similar scenario, right? Now, they are being acquired by Xbox. Bethesda is. And this raises huge questions. Keep in mind, though, that right now, Bethesda is not owned by Microsoft. They are still an independent company. They're still completely on their own. This deal is not finalized. Currently, Microsoft has zero, and I mean zero say on anything Bethesda does. They have zero say. Nothing. They can't tell Bethesda what to do or, anything like this until they own them. Now, Microsoft, of course, can make contract deals with Bethesda still right now, right? It would be kind of weird to make a new deal with Bethesda whenever you have the fact you're going to own them very soon. But technically, they could strike a deal like that. My hunch, though, is no, right? So if this game is going to end up Xbox exclusive, I'm just assuming that the original deal was done between strictly Bethesda and strictly Disney/Lucasfilm. It was more than likely worded that there had to be some form of multi-platform in there. Now, there is leeway, right? You don't have to publish on every single thing to honor these contracts, right? Like, for example, EA has argued in the past with sports franchises that they've viewed Nintendo as non-essential for their sports titles. That's why you've seen sports games pass up on Nintendo platforms in the past before. They've also argued that with PC before, where they've said that pirating was too much of a fear and that they weren't going to release on PC. It wasn't a viable platform. Now, things like this have changed over time, but you get what I'm saying at. There's wiggle room in there, but I'm just assuming this probably had some form of multi-platform wording in the contract. Now, once Microsoft acquires Bethesda, that would change everything, right? Then Microsoft owns them, and they could renegotiate possibly with Disney and Lucasfilm for exclusive rights. Now, will they? Who knows? Is it worth it to them? Who knows, right? They didn't renegotiate, for example, things like Deathloop and contracts like this that are already signed, right? A Microsoft first-party team is going to be making PlayStation 5 exclusives, now timed exclusives, right? Because these contracts were from before the acquisition. So it's kind of what I'm getting at. More than likely, the truth is no one knows, but more than likely, as of now, this project probably started conceptually as a multi-platform title, and we will just have to see if Microsoft renegotiates that to make it an exclusive, right? That's just something we're going to have to keep our eyes on. But that's kind of my overall thoughts. My guess is that this will be multi-platform, though. Franklin Clinton with a super chat. Thank you, Franklin Clinton, so much for the super chat. Actually, why doesn't Disney build their own game studios and pump out games directly? They'd probably make bank off of their hundreds of IPs. So Franklin Clinton, they actually used to. Disney used to make some of their own games. There was a time where they had some studios where they were making games. They basically, at the time, weren't making money off of it. They weren't doing well off of it. And so they closed/sold everything that was doing that. And they kind of got out of the gaming business. My hunch is that they view it as too expensive to try to restart that, right? AAA game development is crazy expensive. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And not only is it crazy expensive in terms of the investment, but also the talent, right? There's only so much talent out there, and there is a lot, right? There's a ton of talent in the video game industry. But it's a very competitive space, too, for talent, right? You already have a lot of the top-tier devs at places like Naughty Dog, at places like Ubisoft, at Sony Santa Monica, right? They're all over the place. So if you want to just completely from scratch start building studios, you have to find this talent, right? And if to get that talent, you're going to have to lure them away from their current employers, which means you're probably also going to have to offer them a better deal than what they already have. So you're going to be spending not only a bunch of money that you normally would on a AAA game, but you're also now building studios, building teams, spending that money to get people to come over to your studio, right? There's a reason, if you look, that Microsoft's new team, The Initiative, has been a slow build, right? You have to build that up over time. It's hard to just make a studio and then instantly have 300 devs there, right? You know, if you're looking for like AAA big production studio teams, it's a slow build. So Disney probably just looks at it and says, hey, this is a lot easier and makes more financial sense for us to just take these IP and license them to teams that already have all that infrastructure. They already have the giant development teams. They already have the culture there. You know what I mean? It's just probably a lot easier for them to do that than to try to build their own studio from scratch. Especially with how many IP they have, right? Like you said, they have hundreds. So if they wanted to truly, really take advantage of that, they'd have to build more than one studio even, right? They'd probably have to have a Star Wars studio and a Marvel studio and a, who knows, Disney animation studio, right? Here's one thing I wonder. Why is there no, like, big Moana games? Why is there no big, like, Frozen games? Now I get why you wouldn't go like full on AAA for that, because it'd be weird for, it's hard for me to envision like Moana and Frozen, selling like a giant Star Wars game. But these are huge IP. I am shocked we haven't seen like some, AA, right? Some, more modest budget, but I'm shocked there's not games like that out there, because I can tell you, even like a halfway, as someone with a daughter, a halfway okay Frozen game, you could sell millions of them. You could sell millions of them. No problem, right? I mean, if it's complete trash, it's not going to sell. But if you had like a decent, nice Frozen title, you're selling millions. You're selling millions. Javier Macias Leon. By the way, I think the new Star Wars game by Ubisoft will be great. I agree. I'm optimistic about it. Do you think they could use elements of Beyond Good and Evil 2? Potentially, but I think they're going to build more off The Division. My guess, looking at the director, right, it's Julian Geghardy, or I hope I'm saying his name right. I apologize if I'm not. But one of the directors of The Division, like one of the main creative directors over there on The Division, is heading up this game. Now, whenever I say I expect it to be building off of the Division. I'm not necessarily saying that I expect this to be some looter shooter online co-op thing. I mean, maybe they go that direction. I don't know. But what I mean is third person, probably lots of shooting elements in it. They've already confirmed it's open world, which makes sense. That's the way the Division is as well. It's using the Snowdrop engine, which looks great, right? So that's also a nice thing. You can count on this game looking dang good because Snowdrop looks beautiful. So I'm guessing it'll borrow less from Beyond Good and Evil 2 and probably be an evolution of some of the stuff you saw in the Division. The Division also had lots of gadgets and stuff, right, which would also make sense in a Star Wars setting. So I think you can look at that and expect an evolution of that in the Star Wars setting. Kostas. Hi, Benji. Do you think God of War Ragnarok has 30 million potential? Ooh, that's big. The original is just shy of 20 million, and when the sequel releases, it could get a good boost to even 25 million, and God of War 5 can sell more than the original. That's tough, Kostas. I don't want to say it's impossible because God of War has become a monster juggernaut franchise, but 30 million's beastly, right? You're starting to hit some crazy territory once you start selling over 30 million. Could it hit 30? If it is as well regarded as God of War 2018, potentially, yes. I'm going to say yes, it could potentially. I'm not as confident to say a lock, right? I'm not as confident to 100% say absolutely it's going to hit 30 million. I would say yes, though, that the potential is there because, like you said, God of War 2018 is going to sell over 20 million. So, potentially. Here's the key, though. It needs to be as beloved as 2018 because one of the things that really helped 2018 is, my God, people loved that game, right? It was already tracking big. Because, I work retail and everything, and I have lots of retail insights from other retailers, right? I worked at GameStop for a long time. I still talk to people at that company about things that they see. God of War 2018 was always tracking big, but once those reviews hit, it went nuclear, right? Keep in mind, that is one of the highest reviewed games of the entire generation. Once those reviews start pouring in, once everyone talked about how mind-blowingly incredible this was, that took it to another level. And that's also what has helped with its great legs over time, is people regard it as one of the best games on the PS4. So no matter what, I expect Ragnarok is going to launch bigger than God of War 2018 just because the demand is going to be there, especially with how 2018 ends. Don't worry, no spoilers, but my God, does it make the sequel seem like it's going to be hype. No matter what, I'm expecting a bigger launch, but to overall outsell God of War 2018 and hit that 30 million range, it's also going to need to be beloved. People are going to, it's to have those long legs, it's going to have to be incredibly beloved title. Venom Harness. Hello, Benji. Do you think at June this year we will not get many AAA game announcements due to the pandemic? Or do you think they will announce new games just without release dates, talking big publishers? Venom Harness, I think it's one of those things that, it's going to be iffy announcing games this year. I hate to say it, but Venom Harness, I think you're going to see a lot of CG trailer announcements this year and also in-game cinematic announcements. I don't know that you're going to see a ton of new games announced with gameplay. I hate to say that, but I think as we all know, pandemic has disrupted stuff so much that I don't know that many teams are going to be in a position to show like a ton of gameplay, right? Especially for brand new games. I'm not talking about stuff that we've already had announced, right? Like you're going to see Horizon gameplay this year at some point, right? There's just no doubt it's coming out this year. So they're going to have to start showing gameplay. You're going to see gameplay for other stuff, but Venom Harness, you're probably going to see a lot of CG announcements and concept announcements. I think that's part of the reason you've seen so many of those lately, right? There was a lot of them in 2020 that were announced that way. A lot. And I think that's going to continue through a lot of this year. Kostas, what do you think about Final Fantasy VII Remake missing the entirety of the top 20 UK bestsellers list? Disclaimer, I might be wrong. It sold better than 15 in the US and Japan, so what's wrong with Europe? From my understanding, Europe is not as attached to Final Fantasy VII as US and Japan were. Now, keep in mind, I think that game did pretty decent in Europe. I'd have to go back and like really look at all the numbers I could find for it. But here's what I can say. In the US, for a lot of people, I mean a lot, literally myself included, Final Fantasy VII was the first JRPG we ever played. For a lot of people. Now, there might have been other games that are RPG-like that we played before that, like a Zelda, for example, that are made in Japan. But what I mean is the way we think of JRPG nowadays, right? The Personas, the Final Fantasies, the Tales of series, etc., etc. For a lot of us, Final Fantasy VII was the first one that we ever played. And so the amount of nostalgia, I can say particularly in the United States for Final Fantasy VII, is enormous, right? And in Japan, yeah, Final Fantasy VII was also gigantic. So I think the reason it didn't perform as well in Europe as what we saw in the US and Japan is strictly because the original Final Fantasy VII was also so much stronger in those markets than it was in some places like the UK, for example. I know that a lot of people in Europe, this was also the first JRPG they played. I'm not saying that's exclusively a US thing, but it was really strong in the US. So I think that's kind of your main reason. Benji's Tank Top. I'm playing Indiana Jones and the Cursed Tomb from the OG Xbox in 4K on my Series X. Man, I love backwards compatibility. Yeah, backwards compatibility is dope. Sometimes I feel like Microsoft doesn't get enough props for how good they've done backwards compatibility. And you know what? PS5 also has great backwards compatibility with PS4. So shout out to Sony for that as well. Let me make sure I haven't missed any super chats. Sorry, my chat's been all messed up and janky, so I'm trying to make sure. Yep, no super chats missed. Split at 89. Lucasfilm Games has so far announced something every day since Monday. Think they have something for tomorrow and Friday as well. That's actually a great point, Split End. You know, here's what's funny. I remember whenever the Lucasfilm branding just first went up a couple of days ago, and it's like people started speculating then. Like as soon as that was a thing that was announced, people started speculating like, oh, does this mean we're going to see, you know, some new projects for them? You know, we'll just have to wait and see. Well, lo and behold, we did not have to wait long at all. We waited like a day, right? Then we got Indiana Jones. Then today we got the whole Star Wars is going to go to multiple studios now. So, yeah, I mean, the timing of them revealing Lucasfilm Games, boy, that sure worked out, right? Will we get something tomorrow and Friday? I don't know. That would be impressive. But Split at 89, one thing I did notice in that Wired article, I think it was Wired, that broke the whole massive Ubisoft news for Star Wars. I think that they noted in that from Lucasfilm that they said they had more announcements to make this year. So I don't know if we'll get anything tomorrow and Friday, but I definitely think we're going to get some more stuff clearly, you know, over the coming months. They said they had more to announce this year. So whenever you think about what else that could be, you know, I doubt there's 2 Indiana Jones games in development, right? So probably more Star Wars projects. That would be my guess. My guess is you're going to see more Star Wars games announced. I mean, honestly, we could even get an announcement for Jedi Fallen Order 2 this year, to be honest. People assume, I think, whenever Lucasfilm's saying that they have more announcements, that that's going to mean more studios making more games. And while that is possible, EA also confirmed today that they are continuing to make Star Wars games even after the exclusive license expires. They said, you know, they're not done with Star Wars. They're just not the exclusive party for it. And Jedi Fallen Order sold incredible, right? Incredible. And that game came out in 2019. So you could see Fallen Order 2 announced this year. That's a strong possibility. Very well could. Obviously not going to come out this year, but you might see them announce it. Benji asking, any projections for the potential sales of the Indiana Jones and Ubisoft Star Wars game? Here's what I can say. The Indiana Jones thing generated crazy momentum on social media. Crazy. So that was the last time I checked, which was yesterday, was at 5 million views on Twitter. Now, this is big for Twitter views. That was in less than a day. Now, granted, Twitter views aren't the end-all, be-all, right? But that is big numbers. Doing 5 million on Twitter for just an announcement video is very, very high. Very, very, very high. Especially whenever you look at that the Bethesda account only has 2 million followers. Now, 2 million followers is a lot, but what I mean, that broke out way wider than just the typical I only look at Bethesda stuff, right? It hit way more views than they had followers in a very short amount of time. So it broke out big. Does that mean I think Indiana Jones is going to sell 5 million plus copies instantly? No, I'm not necessarily saying that. But clearly there's a lot of interest there. So I think it's going to do well if it's good. Has potential to do better than Wolfenstein. Honestly, I know a lot of people really like the Wolfenstein games, myself included. I love Machine Games Wolfenstein games. But Wolfenstein 2 didn't sell that great. And then, what was the latest one? The one with the daughters. Youngblood. That sold terribly. Wolfenstein Youngblood sold terribly. So, yeah. This actually probably, I think Indiana Jones would sell better than Wolfenstein 3. To be perfectly honest with you, I think so. As long as it's good. I mean, if it's bad, that changes everything. But if Indiana Jones is good, probably a better seller than Wolfenstein 3. And then the Ubisoft Star Wars game has, I don't want to go crazy, but you have to say it has 10 million plus sales potential. Whenever you look at how strong Jedi Fallen Order sold, and whenever you look at how high the two Battlefront games sold. Yes, even Battlefront 2 started off slow, but actually had nice legs, right? That game recovered a lot. And the first Battlefront sold huge. So do I know it's going to sell 10 million units? Not by any means. But we have clearly seen when Star Wars games get received well, like Jedi Fallen Order, it is still an enormous brand. So 10 million's in play. It's in play. It has to be good, but it's in play. Upward Boss saying RIP the Division 3. Yeah, I agree. Division 3 is probably not a game. That's probably not going to happen, y'all. And if it does happen, it's going to be quite a ways away. Because, like I said, I think the main director for the Division is now heading up this Star Wars game. So probably no Division 3 in the future. All right. Pong Soul saying Take-Two is bowing out of Codemasters bidding. Yes, that they are. So EA basically has that locked in now. Locked in. Codemasters is going to go to EA. Now, it's not a done deal, just like the Bethesda Microsoft thing. But now that Take-Two has bowed out, now that they're like, nope, we're good, it's basically done. You can count on Codemasters being a new EA studio. So that means EA is going to get rights to the F1 games. They're going to get a strong racing developer. Won't be shocked at all if you see Codemasters making a Need for Speed game, right? It makes perfect sense. So, yep, Codemasters going to EA. Humdrum Dog asking, chances Halo gets delayed? I would say low. I'd say low because I don't think that game's even coming out until like November. So like the very end of the year. And that already caught a year delay. I don't see it getting delayed again. That delay was massive, right? It didn't catch like a 3-month delay. Okay, here's what I'll say. If they would have delayed Halo Infinite like 3 months, I would have not been shocked at all if it caught a second delay. But they delayed Halo Infinite an entire year. So I don't think it gets another one. That's a gigantic delay right off the bat. Gioli Parla saying, if Kina and God of War get delayed, my 2021 will be officially effed up. Don't worry, Kina's not going to get delayed out of this year. So one of the dates that Sony had in there at CES was that Kina is going to be March. Now, I don't know if that's a lock, right? We also had I think it was a PlayStation Magazine or website report before this that Kena was targeting March, and Ember Lab, the developers, noted, hey, we don't have a firm release date. We're working towards one, but we're not there yet. So Sony also saying March does line up with that is the target. So even if Kena slips, it ain't going to slip out of this year, Gioli. If it slips, instead of being March, it might be May, right? It's not going to catch that big of a delay. But God of War could happen. Could happen. With Star Wars exclusivity ending, and Lucasfilm, this is from Michael, and Lucasfilm saying that there's been a ton of ideas pitched to them, makes sense. Does this mean Microsoft and Sony could have their exclusive Star Wars games each? I mean, it's definitely potential, right? Whenever I was talking earlier about licensed IP typically in contracts requiring a multi-platform release, what I meant by that was for obviously not a console developer, right? Or a console manufacturer, right? So if someone like Microsoft approaches Lucasfilm, that negotiation process would be completely different than someone like a Bethesda, right? Microsoft could go in there saying right off the bat, we want an exclusive and we're willing to pay more, right, to get that exclusive made. So maybe they would have to pay, however the contract works out, more favorably for Lucasfilm than, like, let's say a Bethesda would, right? Bethesda might be able to negotiate a slightly cheaper contract to use that IP or get a bigger chunk of revenue off of the game compared to the license holder than like a Microsoft would. But if Microsoft goes in there or Sony and negotiates strong enough, they could lock in an exclusive. It's 100% possible. Yes, we very well could see that, Michael. In fact, I'd go so far as to say I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that. I could see it. I could see it happening. Here's the other question you come at, though, whenever you talk about exclusives with licensed games. That means you basically have to give up one of your studios to do that, right? You're basically saying one of my teams for at least 3 years isn't going to be able to work on one of my IP. They're going to work on something else. So you're also not only doing the whole licensing deal, but you're also giving up one of your teams working on your own IP. So that also makes things a little bit weirder, right? And maybe less attractive for Sony and Microsoft, but Star Wars is such a big brand, I could see it. I think of the two, more likely Microsoft than Sony, because the way they're building up, they have so many teams that they might have more teams willing, to do a Star Wars game. All right, we just had a super chat drop. Thank you so much. Benji with a super chat. Benji, any predictions for NPD, please? Yeah, sure. And could we get a sense of how next-gen platforms will do for this quarter shipments/sales? Yeah, great question, Benji. I made a tweet about this. One thing that's been interesting, PS5 launched bigger than PS4 in basically every single market we've had data in. But interestingly, we are starting to see PS5 in some markets. Now, Japan, it didn't launch bigger, but in many markets it did, right? US, it launched bigger. UK, it launched bigger. Spain, it launched bigger. France, it launched bigger. I could go on and on, right? But one thing we have seen, worth noting in the UK specifically, is that it is starting to not be matching PS4 sales launch aligned. And the reason for that strictly is production, right? It's not demand. And I made a tweet about that. Of course, some people got mad about it. Some people get mad about anything you say. Some people, I think, took it as me saying like, PS5's bombing. No one wants a PS5. Y'all, no. It's literally, the question is consoles. How many consoles can Sony make right now? Clearly not enough, right? There are some markets, I have followers from all over the world, that, and I love that because people give me perspectives of what they're seeing in their markets. And I've had a lot of people respond to that tweet saying that the market that they're in, there has been like no PS5 since launch day restocks, right? Like they haven't gotten any more PS5s. And I can tell you in the US, it's been like pretty rare, right? There's rare drops of stock. It comes like every so often. There's a big chunk of time where there's no consoles, and then there's some, they're gone in like a day, and then you wait again. So clearly manufacturing is just not close to meeting demand. So I think it's going to be an interesting question to see, despite Series X and PS5 both launching globally bigger than their predecessors, will those consoles actually have a bigger launch quarter though? That's going to be very interesting to watch. We don't know. We flat out don't know. And I'm be honest, I think it's going to be close. I won't be shocked if either one of those miss the launch quarter. Now, for Xbox, we'll probably never know because Microsoft just stopped giving hardware numbers a long time ago. But Sony, at least, was still giving us shipment numbers for PS4 basically every single quarter. It would look very suspect if they don't give us that for PS5 in its launch quarter. Here's what I'll say. If they don't give us that, it flat out didn't match PS4's launch quarter. But I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be close overall, strictly because of production. If PS5 outsells PS4 in its launch quarter, I actually don't think it's going to be by that much. I think it's going to be a fairly narrow lead. I think that's going to improve over the spring. So I think we're going to see stocks start to get better. Microsoft themselves even stated this. They said that starting like around April, they think that inventory is going to catch up to demand. PS5 is probably going to be the same way. So I think you're going to start to see PS5 really start soaring in like the springtime once that production capacity increases. But this launch quarter could be pretty tight. In terms of NPD, I kind of commented this on the last chat. So for those that don't know, NPD is dropping this week for December. My guess, Switch, I think, is going to be a huge month, but maybe under expectations for some people, just because of how big 2020 as a year was, right? It was colossal. I think their software is going to be astronomical. So I think Switch's software numbers for December will literally blow minds. Its hardware is going to be huge, giant, but it just depends on what your expectations are, right? For people that are wanting a 3 million December, that's not going to happen. But it should still be a big month. No matter what, it will be the number one selling platform. And then I'm guessing PS5 in second and Xbox below that. But I don't think either is going to have shockingly impressive numbers, to be honest with you. Good numbers, but not that impressive just because of stock. I mean, they could sell 10 times what they're selling right now if there was inventory there, probably. And maybe that's an exaggeration, but you know what I'm getting at. They could sell vastly more if there were consoles there, but there's just not. There's no consoles. And whenever there are consoles, they're gone in a day. So that shows you how below capacity they are of hitting. Thank you for that super chat, Benji. All right, let me get back to some free questions. Dries, how many Sony productions had delays? Of course, this is different in these strange times, but I still think that Sony doesn't announce a release date when they are pretty sure. Sony delays games a lot, Dries, like a lot, especially internally. So, you know, I mean, all you got to look, every Naughty Dog game gets delayed publicly, not let alone internally, but Naughty Dog always hits delays. You know, so it's actually pretty common, to be honest with you, for Sony games to get delayed. God of War notoriously was internally delayed. That game was originally supposed to release in that holiday, but it was delayed. So, it's not very uncommon, Dries. So, yeah. How much sleep forward? Turns out Starfield is actually a secret Star Wars RPG. Yeah, how funny would that be, right? But no, obviously it's a new IP. But I do like that. That's funny. Ooh, this is a great question. DangerMan1337. Could Battlefield 6 be delayed? That is a good question. That is a good question, DangerMan. Oh. We were talking about games with potential delays. That is absolutely a contender, DangerMan. And DangerMan follows that up saying, I mean, with Halo Infinite and Call of Duty 2021, but does EA have any other non-sports titles for 2021? You know what, DangerMan? That is a contender to get delayed till spring. Yes. I would say yes, that is a contender. Does that mean I think it's going to be? I don't know. But, yeah, that is a strong contender, especially with multiple giant other big shooters launching this holiday, right? Activision proved this year they will not go a year without a Call of Duty game. Because all the rumblings were that Cold War came in hot, right? Remember how long that game took to get shown? They basically had like a shortened development cycle for the single player. That game came in red smoking hot. And Activision still made sure Call of Duty came out this year. So Call of Duty is not going to get delayed. Halo Infinite, like I said, is very unlikely to be delayed. So, if you're EA, you might look at it and say, hey, we have two other giant shooters presumably launching right around the exact same time we were going to launch our shooter. So if we delay that till spring, it might give us a better window. Yeah. DangerMan, that is a contender. Yeah, that is a contender for a delay out of this year. Yes. Especially since we've seen nothing on it, right? We have literally not seen one thing on Battlefield 6, so possible. Biothwin 1BI, rumors of a lot of acquisitions happening in the industry. Yep, that is the rumblings. Predict a studio acquisition in the next 6 months. Ooh, this is fun. Asobo seems like a studio that would make sense for Microsoft to acquire. I could see that. That makes a lot of sense. So I could 100% see that happening. The rumblings, word on the street, is that prices right now are going up, y'all. I've been talking about this actually for a few months. Anyone that's been following my my stuff. The word on the street is it is a seller's market. Everyone's looking to buy studios. Like everybody. Activision, Take-Two, EA, Microsoft, even Sony to some degree. So, yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of acquisitions. Yep, I think so. We already saw a lot of acquisitions. It's funny because we've almost grown numb to it. But if you look at how many studios, not just by Microsoft, we all talk about Microsoft. But if you look at how many studios were bought over the last 2 years, just like overall across the board, whenever you count like all the stuff that THQ Nordic has bought, Embracer Group, Microsoft, Sony buying Insomniac, like, dude, so many studios have been bought in the last 2 years, and that's definitely going to continue this year. I would say, like I said, Asobo makes sense to me, and I think Sony is going to get either Housemarque or Bluepoint. I think they're going to get one of them. I would have to think so. So those would be my guesses. Asobo and Housemarque or Bluepoint. I mean, Nintendo just bought somebody too. Right? They just bought the developers of Luigi's Mansion 3. Milan Uter. Hi, Benji. Do you believe that Starfield comes out this year? I have been fairly optimistic about this one. I just saw that Randall Thor, I think, right? If I'm remembering right. I think he just did a video where he stated, and this were just his predictions, but he stated that he believes that Starfield is this year as well. Milan, I would say I think there's a decent chance. Now, we have to factor in with this new news coming from Jason that there's a bunch of delays happening. So maybe that was one of the games that was supposed to be 2021, but it's being delayed. But my hunch has been for a while that 2021 felt like a right year for Starfield. I'm going to put it slightly above 50-50. I'm going to say 60-40. 60% chance it comes out this year, but I could be completely wrong on that, especially with this new news about delays. Ken B. Hi, Benji. With the new Mario Edition Switch coming out next month, do you think that means a Switch Pro is off the table anytime soon? Not necessarily, Ken. But Switch Pro has literally been one of those rumors that's bit me in the butt like 5 times. There has been rumors about Switch Pro forever, Ken. Forever. I'm not even an insider at all, except for sales. I definitely am an insider on sales data. But for like general stuff, I hear things, but I don't consider myself an insider, right? It's one of those things that I just consider myself someone that hears stuff, but I wouldn't consider me a super reliable source for rumors. But I can tell you, even I have heard the Switch Pro rumor, probably 5 times. So who freaking knows, right? You've had Bloomberg report it, but who knows? I think that 2021 makes sense for a revision of some kind from Nintendo. If you look historically about how the timing of when they release revisions, it sure makes sense to have a revision this year. Whether that's going to be a full-on Pro or not, who knows? But I'm inclined to think yes. Can be if I had to bet on it, and I would have said this before, so take that for what you will. I'm going to say I still think one comes this year. My guess is Nintendo plans on launching the Switch revision around the same time of Breath of the Wild 2. So if Breath of the Wild 2 is this year, I think the Switch revision is this year. KH. I think Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury was Nintendo's holiday game 2020. Could have been, okay? Due to COVID, it moved to March 2021, and Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity was the holiday game 2020. Okay, it's definitely possible. Like I mentioned earlier, Bowser's Fury looked a lot better than what I expected. I think Super Mario 3D World is going to sell better than I expected. I had somebody comment on and I can't remember the name, I apologize, but I had somebody comment on one of my posts, and they had said that they, expected 3D World to outsell New Super Mario Bros. Wii U Deluxe on the Switch. So I guess it would be New Super Mario Bros. Deluxe on Switch, whatever. And I had said I did not expect that. And the main reason I said that is because right now, if you want like a traditional 2D Mario game, like that's your only option, really, right? Unless you're talking about like the really old retro ones that you can play, through the eShop. But in terms of like a somewhat newer, high quality 2D Mario, you also have Super Mario Maker 2, so that is worth noting as well. But you know what I'm getting at, like a single player, not creating levels, just 2D Mario game. That is your 2D Mario game. Whereas for 3D Marios, you got a lot of options, right? You've got the 3D All-Stars collection, you got Super Mario Odyssey, you see what I'm getting at. So this would have been yet another 3D Mario. So my thought is that it's probably not going to have the kind of legs necessarily that Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe has had, because that game's had great legs for Nintendo. But after seeing how good Bowser's Fury looks, I'll tell you what, I might have been wrong on that, K. Bowser's Fury looks pretty freaking sweet, and it generated crazy numbers on Twitter yesterday. A lot of people talking about it. So, yeah, Bowser's Fury could be big. Could have been their holiday game. Tell you what, Age of Calamity did great, though. Like, it did very, very good. So, maybe that's what Nintendo ended up with in the end, but it did all right for them. It did good. Like, really good, actually. It's the best-selling Musou game of all time already. Humdrum Dog asking, do you know what's happening with Beyond Good and Evil 2? No, I have no insider info on that one. None. I have not talked to a single person that is working on that game. So I apologize, but I have zero idea, zero updates on Beyond Good and Evil 2. That is not something I got access to. All right. Chris Prezuski. I hope I'm saying that correctly. If not, I apologize. Yoshi P said, more Final Fantasy 16 news 2021. Project Athea aiming to release January 2022. Yep. Final Fantasy 8 or 7 Remake Part 2 in production. Has Square Enix fixed its long production times? Chris, it seems somewhat, yes. So I think Square Enix overall has kind of figured out their Japanese studios. Like, for anyone that has followed Square Enix, you know, once they switched over to HD development, so like the 360 PS3 era, they very much struggled with that transition. It was very hard for them, right? I feel like Square Enix has finally gotten to the point where their Japanese teams are firing on all cylinders, right? Whenever you look at Kingdom Hearts 3, I'm not just talking about quality here, right? I know people have different opinions on quality, but when you look at the decent pace that they made with getting Final Fantasy 15 out, actually, once it switched over to Tabata and team, once you had Kingdom Hearts 3, once you had Final Fantasy 7 Remake, once they brought that in-house. I'm not talking about when it was being made by CyberConnect, I believe. It really seems like that, yes, they have their Japanese studios figured out, up and running. Unfortunately for them, their Western teams does not seem to be the same case. It seems like their Western studios are struggling while their Japanese teams are coming together. It raises an interesting question on it if Final Fantasy 16 is a 2021 game. And if it was targeted, what if this is one of the games that's being delayed out of the year, right? Because that was shocking to me when Sony said Project Athea is January 2022. That completely floored me. Like, even if I would have thought 2022 was possible, I would have said late 2022. That game got announced with just a project name, right? Not even a actual name, which made me think that was very far away. January 2022, that's less than a year. So, wow, that is way sooner than I expected. Well, not necessarily less than a year. I guess it depends on the date. You know what I mean? Basically exactly a year from now. Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 is definitely further away than that. Definitely. That game is going to be the furthest out of these three. It's going to be after Project Athea and after Final Fantasy 16. But yeah, we could see Final Fantasy 16 sooner than expected, potentially. Justin Y saying, Microsoft would be stupid if Indiana Jones is not exclusive. They money-hatted Tomb Raider to combat Uncharted, which is actually true, by the way. That is literally why they paid for Tomb Raider to be exclusive. Like, that's not just a theory. That's literally why, which is funny. Yeah, they locked in Tomb Raider as a counterpoint to Uncharted. This is their perfect opportunity. Justin, it's all going to come down to that contract and if Disney and Lucasfilm agree to it, right? Microsoft could come up to them with a huge chunk of money and they could still say no if the contract requires multi-platform, because this was a signed deal before Microsoft had any say in it. And I've seen some people say, well, you don't know that because Microsoft's been talking to Bethesda, for a while. Well, no, I do know that because, like I said, Microsoft doesn't own Bethesda right now. So literally right now today, after the game was announced, Microsoft has zero say on what Bethesda does. Not until this deal is locked in. They have no control over Bethesda. So this contract, the fact it was announced, that means it's already been signed. So it all depends. It would be smart, I think, of Microsoft, I agree, to try to make this exclusive, but it all comes down to that contract. VYAS, or VYAS, sales potential for Perfect Dark. I'm going to say not crazy high, to be honest with you, unless it gets some crazy good feedback. And the reason I say that, and whenever I say not super high, I don't mean like a bomb. I mean, I just don't see this being like some kind of 10 million selling game. Perfect Dark was never a huge IP. There was no point in time that Perfect Dark was huge. It's a beloved IP by many people, but it's never been big, like big. So here's what I'll say, Vas. For it to like really break out, it's going to have to be really freaking good. Like really freaking good. And if it does, there is potential there. It's always hard to predict games that we've seen nothing but like a CG trailer for, right? Like we've seen basically nothing on Perfect Dark, and it's made by a brand new studio. So it's going to be hard to forecast its sales. But what I'll say is like, I don't go into it expecting a giant sales number, because Perfect Dark is not a franchise that has ever been a big seller. And it also hasn't had a new entry for a very long time. So it's also been a very dormant franchise. Put it this way, between Perfect Dark and Fable, I 100% expect Fable to be bigger than Perfect Dark. People forget the Fable games sold very well. Now, there was some bombs towards the end of Fable, right? Once they started doing the weird spin-off, Connect games and card games and things like this. But the mainline Fable games were good-selling games. So just as a comparison to another Microsoft IP, I would predict Fable to sell more than Perfect Dark. All right, I'm only going to take a few more questions, and then we're going to jump out of chat. I am sorry for all the issues today. I am sorry that somehow my internet still doesn't work when I am right next to my router. So just to give you an indication, on my phone, which is right here, my download speeds are like 130 megabits a second, and my computer, when I do a speed test, is like 20 megabits a second. I have no idea. I have literally no idea how to fix it. I've tried all kinds of stuff. I don't know. All right, let me do just a couple more questions, and then we're going to head out, y'all. Vas saying Steam posted their 2020 stats and they have 120 million monthly users. How does that compare to PSN and Xbox Live? I would have to go back and double check the most recent numbers for those. Well, let me see. Those are actually, they have been announced. But they're always changing. So off the top of my head, I don't know the exact number. Let me see. So Sony said in July, there could be one more recent than this, so I apologize if this is an old number. But in July, they announced 103 million monthly users for PlayStation Network. So that would give you an idea there. No, in August, they said 114. So there might even be one newer than that. But yeah, that's kind of an example there for Sony. Microsoft, I'd have to double check again too, because they have announced that. I don't remember off the top of my head the exact number or the most recent number. But at the very least, we know Sony was at 114 million in August. So pretty darn close to Steam, right? Which is actually impressive, considering Steam is giant and global into the main PC storefront. So shows you how big Sony is with their PlayStation brand. Split End saying, until some dotted lines are signed, we won't know anything about exclusivity. You are 100% right, Split End. Even Starfield is still up in the air. Every time we see something that makes it seem exclusive, something else negates that. That is 100% correct, Split End. I know it's frustrating, but we're not going to get concrete answers until Microsoft straight up owns Bethesda. It just will not happen before then. Unless a contract was signed prior to this, right? We know that Bethesda was shopping Starfield around for exclusivity before even the Microsoft acquisition news, right? There were those rumors that they were trying to get Sony, right? There was those rumors floating that Sony was looking at locking Starfield down as PS5 exclusive. So clearly they were shopping it. Did Microsoft sign a Starfield exclusive deal before they even acquired Bethesda? That's possible. But the overall, like all of the Bethesda games, we will not know anything about exclusivity until they are bought. We have to remember that. I know it's frustrating because that announcement was so long ago that Microsoft was going to buy them, but it's still not done. All right, everyone. I think I'm going to have to call the chat there. I am gonna jump out. I've got stuff that I gotta do. I gotta get ready and go to work. You know, I always do these chats usually right before I go to work. So I'm gonna call a chat there, everyone. Sorry for all the technical issues today. I'm gonna still keep trying to troubleshoot it and figure out exactly what's going on. Maybe I need to completely wipe my computer. Maybe there's some kind of weird thing going on there. Literally no idea, y'all. Part of the reason I moved upstairs is I thought it would fix my internet, but it didn't. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming to the chat. Make sure you like the video if you like doing these live chats. Subscribe to my channel if you are not subscribed yet. We do one of these live chats every single week. Usually they're smoother than what we went through here today. But make sure you subscribe. We're trying to get to 3,000 here. Hopefully we get to 3,000 soon. And everyone have a great day. Stay safe. Play some games, and I will see you either over on Twitter or in my next YouTube live chat, everyone. Thank you so much. Stay safe, and bye. Bye, bye, bye.